Hi, and welcome back to Bots and Beyond, another brilliant episode lined up for you this week with the lovely Laura Robertson. So Laura's someone I've known for a little while now, and we've been talking about doing an episode for a few months now, I guess it would be. So it's great to finally get Laura on the show.
Yeah, great to be here, Wayne. Thank you.
Excellent. And obviously we've had loads of conversations about the wonderful world of automation. And so I feel like I know a fair bit about you, but for the rest of our Bots and Beyond guests, it would be great, as is standard now for all of our guests, if you can do your intro. And for anyone who's new to the show, that's who you are, what you do, and more importantly, why you do it.
Yes, of course. First of all, I'd like to say I love the electronic intro. I always imagine that people are standing here with glow sticks, but I'm not standing here with glow sticks, but I'm very, very passionate about automation. I'm Vice President in automation. I've now worked in industry and for consultancies and under my own limited company called Zukunft Consulting since 2013. This was after I had a changing career. Previously, I'd been working for about a decade in investment banks. And just a little bit on Zukunft Consulting. So it is a German word. It sometimes causes a bit of hilarity with the pronunciation. Zukunft actually means future in German. So it's really to reflect my German linguistic skills and also future consulting, meaning that I look to implement tools and technology to future-proof processes and for the future of work. Why do I do automation? Well, I was in investment banks before, and automation really just seemed to me like a natural transition. I'd had exposure to tools like algorithmic trading. They were all about revenue generation. And I found this tool while I was working at Deloitte that was a lot more exciting, a lot more easy to use. And it was more than pure revenue generation. It was about improving efficiencies and reducing costs as well. Some of my drivers, one of them is having been a linguist, I'm very open thinking. So I'm always looking to understand different ways of working, speaking, even different foods, different language, literature. And I've always looked to bring that into the organisations that I've worked in. And there's really nothing better than the automation space to be able to do this and to be able to understand the latest advances in technology. I also love building capability. There's nothing I love more than watching somebody go from scratching their head, what is all this RPA, when they're first understanding it, because, we have been doing this for a while, but there are many organisations that still have a lack of understanding about what it means in practice. And often when I first go into an organisation, I look at doing a little demo of what the bot will be doing on a process and getting that recorded. And often I get my stakeholders to record themselves, either talking through the process or talking a little bit about the value it's added. So that's a core driver for me. And the final one is reducing waste. Having professionally grown up in investment banking, there it is all about getting the FX arbitrage, if you like, on a trade, executing quickly, efficiently, getting it executed in order to beat the competition, but also with the least risk as possible. And in much the same way, I dislike my own time being wasted. And when I look at grads coming through university now, I just think, why would they want to sit and do mind-numbing copy-paste from one Excel to another like my generation did? So surely our society's aim is to advance and progress. I'm actually reading Tim Peake's Astronaut at the moment. It's actually bought for my son, but I've picked it up, and to my surprise, I can't put it down. It's a bit of a foreign concept to me as well. The space station was built. It wasn't built to reduce costs or increase revenue. It was built for that pure human adventure. And clearly, they're doing a lot of experiments up there about how the body reacts to space and furthering medical advances. But it's really good to be reading something that's not about pure efficiency saves. However, having said that, you also read about how every ounce of liquid up there is saved and sweat's recycled and repurposed as drinking water. So, it just shows, again, we're in an environment now where we can explore and we can still also save energy. And in much the same way for automation, it's still an adventure many organisations are just embarking on. And I'm sure in the future they'll be able to pinpoint many other benefits with automation than we've already done up to now. So I think for automation, just like space, we've still only scratched the surface of where we can go with it.
Wow, I don't even know where to start. I have so many questions now.
Don't ask me about space.
Well, I mean, the good news is robots don't sweat. I won't ask you about space. That's fine. But there was loads in there that I kind of think we should dig into. The investment banking space and kind of what what you saw there. That's really fascinating that you spent your time in investment banking, and obviously algorithmic traders are seen as the future, and anyone who's watched the program Billions will kind of see that in a TV show, and I was fascinated by that program. Really, really great. They talk about quants on a regular basis. So there's that. I guess going from investment banking into automation, you said it felt quite natural. It doesn't come across as being a very natural fit. So what was it about the work that you were doing within investment banking and you were thinking, there's got to be a different way? Is there something that kind of tweaked your interest? Anything specific you can remember?
Yes, I would say it was about being more efficient. I was always looking for ways to, I don't know, run a report quicker. I built something in an Access database, but it needed to be something, because I wasn't traditionally a technologist. It needed to be a technology that was easy for me to understand and learn myself. And it was really when I was at Deloitte back in 2015 that I got exposure to tools like Automation Anywhere, UiPath, and I put a business case together, saw this potential for a 50% return on investment, and it was so easy to understand in comparison to some of the other development tools, and also the vendors that I got exposure to, or I partnered with, or I became ambassador for. They just seemed like a lot of fun. And one of their core ethos was to educate others, and that really appealed as well. And it just seemed to me a much more innovative environment than, some of your more traditional staid banks.
And that makes a lot of sense. The other thing I liked about what you were talking around was the capability, the side of the house. And again, maybe that's something that we'll speak about shortly, because this is, as much as we talk about it being a technology or a group of technologies, it really is far from just the technology that is going to enable true success. So I like the fact that you raised that. It's something I've certainly been focusing in on over the last decade, that see automation as a capability, not as a technology, and you will go a lot further. So great to hear similar echoes from yourself. You've had a few different roles now that have focused in on automation. What's the thing you've learned most so far? Like, what are those kind of now, 5 to 10 things that you're thinking, right, next role, okay, these are the things, these are the foundations that I need to be thinking about. These are your kind of golden rules that you have yourself as you embark on automation in a new organization, and whether that's in consulting, in industry, because I know you've now done both, so you have a really colourful background. So what is it? What are those kind of things that are your table stakes, let's say, as you embark on a new adventure?
Yes, of course. I would say one of the things I've learned is that there is no top 10. You have to be flexible. There are things that keep repeating themselves, and the thing about lessons is you do also want to have the capability to be able to repeat what's gone well when it has, as well as, that was terrible, I don't want to do that again. What's my action plan for the next time? I would say at a high level, for me, when you look at capability, it's not about certificates. It's not always about very in-depth skill sets to be successful in automation. It's often about the team fit, and that goes across industries, about your stakeholder trust, and also your trust in the tools and technologies that you're dealing with. When I think about when I'm recruiting people, I want somebody that can do the job, but I also want them to have creativity and passion. I did put together a lessons learned in 2021. It was the top 5 pitfalls of RPA. I won't go through all of them, because there are 4 key ones that that came from these lessons and some more that I collated back in 2019, a couple of years ago. And there's these 4 that I've been discussing over the last few weeks with my network, because they do keep coming up time and time again. And when you're in the throes of an automation implementation, or you're trying to build a practice, and you're looking to create revenue and make it profitable, or you're doing implementation, you need to look at your benefits, you need to look at how your processes are being analysed, you need to make sure you're choosing the right tool for it. It's really easy to forget what you've learned in the past, and you have to keep reminding yourself of why you did it that way. So one of them is just how important that executive sponsorship is, whether you're doing a proof of concept, a COE, building a whole operating unit. That exec sponsorship is key. And another one is you need to take a design approach. So RPA, it was seen as this bolt-on, but often the more banks that I speak to that have done it successfully, it becomes invaluable to them. It becomes part of the operating model, and it's not backed out. It's achieving the benefits. It's very efficient. But that is often organisations that have thought with that design head, have thought strategically, and also they've thought about the longer term. And we also now have the citizen development movement coming up more and more in practice now. And again, the conversations I'm having, it shows me how crucial that holistic view is when you're building that COE, and that you should think realistically and practically about how it integrates with your IT estate. Think about your enterprise architects as well, and the crucial role that they play. So there are some key lessons from last year going into this. And then further back in 2019, I put 13 lessons together. They really reflected my experience from 2015 in industry and at consultancies. 2 of them, again, are key here. And one of them is don't do change management as an afterthought. And when I say change management, I'm talking about changing hearts and minds, not just, how do I do problem incident management? How do I do configuration in Jira? What does my release go live look like? What boxes do I tick to manage the change successfully? Change management is really, how do you change people's minds? And one of the ways I mentioned that I've done that is getting a really quick demo working very quickly, and getting people seeing it and understanding visually what it looks like, and helping them understand what kind of change is involved. Another key one, you're always looking to re-engineer first. You want to speed up the work people are doing beforehand. And again, that leads to buy-in. They're then sitting there thinking, oh, thank God I don't have to do that process anymore. Thanks. What can we do now to make it quicker? And you don't want a bot running things like macros either. You want to re-engineer as much as you can to make it as efficient, both for the automation and for the people still working in that area. Lesson 3, being aware of averages and snapshots. Often you've got a team of BAs putting together average processing times, but you also need to be thinking about how long a task typically takes and how much effort is typically involved. These averages are a convenient summary, but they might be hiding really interesting aspects of process performance. And my most successful implementations of programs that I've worked on have been where I've combined RPA and Lean Six Sigma methodologies. And one of the ways of presenting that data on a process is box plots. They give that really useful way to graphically summarize the distribution of values, not just the averages. And that's really useful when you're trying to understand why current performance of a process is unacceptable. So you need to be looking at the distribution and not just the averages. And it's also why process mining has become so crucial in the industry. A team of good BAs can put together a few happy paths, but you also need to think scientifically about the process. And that also leads on to metrics. Metrics have been key in my successful programs and operating units. And the most useful ones are those which are leading, they're measuring causes, and they're controllable. And it's because they're measuring things that have an impact down the line, but that you can manipulate. And they also let you find out about enough about them in time to be able to do something. And in contrast, a Six Sigma black belt will tell you the very worst process ones. Metrics are those where you can't even control what's happened in the first place, and they're just symptoms of what's happening. Number 4 lesson, really consider how you build a digital culture. You want growth mindsets, people ready, willing and open to learn. And you want that safe place for people to experiment. And, you know, there's further wisdom I'll come on to on that around having that and creating an environment where there's that psychological safety and there's no fear of failure. In RPA, it is easy to get a proof of concept up and running, even in a bank. But an RPA that has a 2-year long proof of concept is not a success. It's a fear of failure. So leave it and move on to a more relevant process to automate. And I think the final lesson is you really need, and this has come up recently again, you really need to take security requirements and any concerns that the organisation has around security into account, or it will become your undoing. Are your credentials stored in a secured repository? Are they available via encrypted channels? And you need to ensure that whatever security credentials you use match your own internal policies and procedures. And if you're looking to roll out quickly, you need to make sure that in line with all of that, you don't need to purchase additional kit.
Wow. And guess what? You hardly actually mentioned anything to do with the technology itself. It was all to do with kind of people and process in that kind of creating that spine in order to help organizations scale. So I think that was one of the things that I certainly jotted down as I was making notes as you were speaking then. So loads of great insight there for anybody who is, you know, I guess in, they call it pilot purgatory. So brilliant. Really, really do think that that's amazing insights. Having been around the industry for a while now, and I guess you will have seen a lot of the headlines, let's say, around what automation can do, what it will do, almost the promises of a digitized workforce and the vast majority of all work being automated. We haven't seen that. I don't know whether we will see that, but you know, what are the let's not say lies, let's say untruths or stretched truths. What are the biggest stretched truths that you've seen in the industry? You know, what are your views on, you know, the reality? Let's talk about it. So you mentioned a couple of vendors earlier, which is great, and this is certainly not a slander on any particular vendor, but just as an industry, where have we maybe stretched the truth somewhat, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that's evolved quite a lot. There was at the start, there was very much it's about headcount reduction and implement this, and you know, we'll reduce your headcount by 10, 20, 30%. We've definitely come away from that now. It's still not black and white in RPA. There's no right or wrong. You know, the best practice is emerging, but it doesn't exist. So yeah, I agree, Wayne. We should be calling it maybe exaggerations than lies. And the vendors are looking to really jump on the opportunities that are available. There's a couple of exaggerations I've experienced. One of them is around you need to get certificates to prove your value and get all these certificates and away you go. You know, obviously gaining a certificate in tandem with your day job, it shows passion, it shows you discipline, willingness and adaptability to learn new things. And none of that's restricted by age. Anybody can get a certificate. So that's a really positive thing. And they can be really beneficial when you're coming into a new industry or for a changing career. And also consultancies place the cap on how many consultants they have trained in, I don't know, ITIL, Scrum, Agile, AWS, Azure, data science. So when I'm recruiting consultants into a practice, it is something I'm mindful of, because your potential partners are looking for that certification so that you can become accredited in that tool and also get reduced license costs. But it's key, obviously, to think about the value to the people you're leading and managing. You know, these certificates, they won't allow you to do your day job from a day-to-day standpoint if you don't already know how to do it. There'll be a new introduction, a good intro to a new job, or they'll underline latent skills you maybe didn't know you had, when I look back to when I started my MBA in technology management, I suddenly had this light bulb moment and said, wow, I think I was doing a module on leadership. And I had this moment, oh, that's why I did it like that. And that was actually something that through practice, I was unconsciously competent in. It's what a lot of the learning theorists would call tacit knowledge. And there's another academic I love, Boisseau, who talks about taking that textbook knowledge, going all the way through the learning cycle, and actually it becomes common sense. And if you can practice, so what you're doing, whether you're coding, whether you're analysing a process, whether you're managing a program, so it almost becomes like common sense. That's where you want to be. Getting a formal certificate, it might highlight this. It might even explain the why of your own why. But if you haven't had exposure to that skill before, it'll be a good theoretical introduction, but it won't be any more than that. It won't make you an RPA guru overnight if you've never once implemented. And the other exaggeration, as I said, we don't have formal best practice in RPA or automation. The industry is still too young. It's very much still a case of trial and error. There's a few basic certificates you can get, but there is one exception to this, and that is the citizen development movement. And the PMI, the Project Management Institute, have recently published, again, a certificate, but also a manual to help people really understand how you implement citizen development correctly and effectively. And we hear this exaggeration, citizen development, it's by the people, for the people, it's really easy to do. But time and again I hear, it's not quite gone how we expected. It's a bit of a cottage industry now, and IT don't have any governance and oversight about how these tools are being managed. So that's another exaggeration that you need to be aware of, and it is really worth you spending time and money on getting experts in to help you set up either a citizen development COE or an RPA COE. It really will be worth your while.
More great insights there from your experience. And I mentioned before that your experience is both, we said consultant, you've been in investment management. We've obviously got COE leadership skills in there. Kind of what's the biggest difference you see as being on the consulting side, as a practice lead versus in industry as a COE lead? Is there any differences there that you've noticed, having been on both sides of the fence?
Yes, of course. Yeah, there are. I think that probably deserves a whole episode on its own. I'll highlight them from that capability standpoint more. But I just want to quote John Hagel, who wrote, he writes a lot about the future of work. And his mantra is, work should be addressing unseen problems and opportunities to create more value. So when you look at it like that, you take away the titles of practice leader or COE leader, but obviously we have to think pragmatically as well. I think everybody should be thinking about how they are creating more value. That's why, in my view, that's why we go to work. But what does an automation COE lead versus an automation consultancy hire for? We can assume it's domain-specific knowledge, but actually, if you're a good BA, you can end up understanding so much about the process yourself that's really, in my opinion, it's not mandatory, but some consultancies do insist on this to gain that credibility with clients. And many consultancies, just like a COE, look to keep their skill sets. You want to keep them up to date on a regular basis, very much in light of cloud and data offerings. And I've been involved in two consultancies who've completely revamped how they build up skills and capabilities recently, partly because other revenue streams, may be ebbing. And that's a key factor, the difference between the two. As a COE leader, you may be tasked with finding revenue benefits, but actually as a practice lead, that is one of your key responsibilities. It's to bring in that revenue by various means and methods. For me, when I'm recruiting, it's, as I said, it's less about that domain knowledge, because certainly as a BA, you'll be getting that when you're exploring the process. It's more about the credibility of expertise, whether you're a business analyst, a tester, a developer, a program manager, but it's also about your passion. It's about those behaviours and those tools you're using. And sometimes it's candidates who are really self-aware that are more appealing than a candidate that's gone and got many certificates. You could be getting certificates because you're really passionate about what you're doing, but it could also be because you're not quite identified where your strengths and weaknesses are. And you want, when you're practice lead, you want consultants that are confident in their skill set, that aren't going to shy away from making suggestions for improvements to clients. And if you're running a COE, you always want to be adopting that continuous improvement approach. And on the name of COE, actually, I've often renamed that to Capability Centre, because there can be that, stigma with, oh, I don't belong to the Excellence Club. So I'm always looking of ways to easily implement what I'm trying to do. So I've called them capability centres. And it was really interesting listening to another lady you had on, I think it was a lady called Karine, talking about roles of the future. And I think she'd read the 21 Roles of the Future report by Cognizant. And that report takes away the conversation from what certificates do I need, what qualifications do I get, because they just don't exist yet. You've got roles like head of machine personality design, and there you're talking about skills like media awareness of AI bias. So, we still don't have as many certificates, qualifications on the market as what our future roles will be or need. So you do want to do things in a best practice way, but you also need to have your eye on the horizon of where technology is going, where the industry is heading. And in the present, you do need to practice. That's the only way you'll improve. You won't improve by taking exams. So that's really my answer. What's the difference between the two? There's not a difference in terms of the people you're managing and the fact that you are expecting them to practice, to gain experience, to be passionate. I also don't think it's always a case of looking externally when you're hiring. I'm usually look to assess who already exists in the organisation who might have those kind of skill sets, and that's relevant for a consultancy, or also to bring in somebody internally into the COE. And I've used a tool, I've used design thinking in the past to do this, and that might sound a little bit strange, but I'll explain why. We know design thinking is about taking a customer-centric approach, looking at the challenges clients have with that lens of empathy. But I've also used it to look at how skills and capabilities are built up. If you read Roger Martin's article in HBR, he discusses something called the Opposable Mind. I think the full title is How Successful Leaders Win Using Integrative Thinking. It's from 2007, but it's, that's not that old when we think about some of the methodologies we use in practice today. And it's really, really relevant, particularly when we're working in environments like automation, where it's about practice, it's about building up experience, and it's about prototyping. So design thinking, it underlines, we have this 5-step methodology that's been developed, starting with empathy and leading on to a prototype. And it's very much about trial and error. You've got at the bottom of the pyramid in the article, you've got a box of experiences. So rather than going and thinking, oh, I've not got experience in this, I must, certify myself to the nth degree. This actually says, you should be using your experience to guide what you look at gaining as a qualification next. And that's also been my experience. The most successful people that I've had, and also the most success I've had is where I've got on, I have done it, practiced it, learned from it, had an action plan at the end of it. So it's really using your experience to build on where you go next. And also I'd be asking, how are you bringing in external views into your organisation? think about whether getting another certificate will do that for you. I've also recently been looking at Bridgewater, the Bridgewater business model, and it's gained some celebrity with how they do things. They developed, I don't know whether you're aware of this, Wayne, they developed a model to assess candidate competency once they're in position, and Ray Dalio really flipped assumptions about credibility on its head with it's called the DOT system. So people are rating each other non-stop to reach the best decisions. They're allocated a score according to others' opinions of them. And then there's algorithmic analysis of the collective cognitive process. And when you think about human and machine augmentation, this is really, really fascinating. Certainly for me, it's fascinating. Dalio's assumption is there's a more democratic way of assigning value to skill sets and capabilities. I've got some concerns that if everybody can see how everybody's ranking each other, there could be a tendency towards groupthink. But whether you agree with the method or not, it's a really interesting concept. I just wonder what it'd be like to rank a bot executing on a process against a group of people. And, when you think about it in those terms and how the humans would rate the bot, it's just absolutely fascinating. So I was then took that away and thought, oh, well, how do I find the experts in my organization? There's tools like Microsoft Teams WhoBot. It's really easy to download using AI bots. And I was really looking to find out who was contributing on the forums, who was participating and had an interest in RPA or AI, data science. And I really wanted to track them down. And it's quite interesting because you can also find out who's got an interest who you didn't have any awareness at all of in the organization. And then you've got other tools. You've got StarMind, Who Knows, Profinder. These are AI augmented graph databases. And they're also specializing in the automated identification of experts. I've not used those as much, but as I said, the teams, the WhoBot, it's been really fascinating to have a play about with that. And you're looking for your internal candidates' expertise to be showcased, but you are relying on them to be contributing to the team forums. And, we need to be aware when we're adopting these kind of tools, it may put some candidates at a disadvantage. I'm a woman in technology. I'm aware we're not always very good at blowing our own trumpets. I know you've had about 7 other women on your podcasts up to now, which is really impressive. But I did ask myself, I wonder how many others you've asked, Wayne, who have either not responded or said, oh, I don't think it's for me. And also how many others there are out there who've just not showcased their automation skills yet. So I think in summary, what I'm saying is with any tool or certificate, ensure it's backed up with experience and also always be aware of potential bias.
Wow. So much insight and commentary there. Really, I don't even know where to start other than it sounds like there's probably another 3 or 4 episodes that we need to record in order to dig into just even half of the things that you've highlighted. So I think for anyone who's really looking at getting to grips with some of the basics, some of the more complexities, then this is an amazing episode for them. And I can't imagine why you wouldn't have a huge number of connection requests to catch up moving forward as a result of some of these great insights. Unfortunately, you've spoken so much that we now have got to the end of the episode. So I almost don't wish it to end. Maybe we do end it with a nod towards a future episode. And it would be great if the audience themselves are able to highlight what specific points Laura has raised that are worth deep diving into and getting further insights as somebody who is so experienced in this wonderful world of automation that we reside in. So Laura, thank you ever so much for agreeing to join me on Bots and Beyond this week.
Thank you, Wayne. Really enjoyed it.
Excellent. And I'm sure the audience will as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining us on this week's Bots and Beyond. And we will be back in another couple of weeks for another amazing episode, amazing guest. Thank you very much.